They called us Radical Leftist Scum. So I made it into a podcast. Now we've got a little corner of the internet where we can dye our hair blue, we can share our pronouns, and we can find the next thing to be woke about. And according to the people clutching their pearls, apparently, let me just check my notes, we can hate America. Welcome to the Radical Leftist Scum podcast. I'm your host, Valdet. If you're anything like me, you've probably had at least one "what the fuck is happening" moment every single day. I want to start with one of those moments, one of those stories where like you'll feel your stomach drop and you think, this isn't normal. This is not normal. How are we just accepting this? How are we just moving on from this even? ICE is fucking killing people, like in a very literal way. They are killing people in custody. People are dying in their custody. They had more deaths with this administration than ever before, with less people that they've detained, but more people have died. And American citizens exercising their rights are also dying by ICE. I mean, I want you to picture this. Like, this is our reality now. You're watching the news. You know, you see like either a grainy video from inside a detention center, or you see videos from people's phones at a protest. You see someone pinned down, begging, struggling to breathe. And then you watch them die on camera. We've already watched 2 American citizens get basically effectively executed on television, Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. And then we're expected to just go back to answering emails like nothing happened, get to work. What the fuck? This is some of the most dystopian Black Mirror shit that I've ever heard of. And what's even more wild is after the 2 deaths we actually saw on TV, there are so many more people who have died in ICE detention that never became a headline. You know, and a lot of times people say, well, they were a mother, they were a father, they were a brother, they were a sister. They were a human being. They were a fucking human being. And we all have rights. I'm a human rights consultant. We all have rights as humans that go above the law. And their human rights were violated. But they are also people with families who love them, who have been impacted by their deaths. Alex Preddy was an ICU nurse helping people, helping the world, helping veterans. And now they're gone because a system, our government, decided that they were disposable. Fucking Kristi Noem. Now I want you to think about that. How would that be described? Like, what's going on in this country? How would that be described if we're happening somewhere else? Because if we said another country, you would hear things like, oh, authoritarian crackdown on migrants. Oh, the regime is using detention as a weapon. State violence against civilians. But because it's the United States, the headlines turn into controversial immigration policy sparks debate. Officials defend use of force. Critics raise concerns over conditions. The language gets sanded down, and it sounds like just another story in what seems like an endless news scroll. I'm telling you, you're not overreacting when you feel sick seeing this, and you're not being too sensitive. What's actually happening, what's been happening, is that we're being conditioned to treat authoritarian creep as background noise, as wallpaper, as one thing you click past on your phone. Some days it feels like, personally, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Some days for me, it feels like we're living in the series finale of that show Lost on ABC, where we find out that we've all been dead this entire time, and this is just purgatory, but with push notifications. Now, let me be real with you. I 100% hold Donald Trump and his cult MAGA responsible for dragging us into this fucking nightmare of a timeline. We're only here because a movement decided that one person's ego and power mattered more than reality, than institutions, and more than fucking human beings. The main reason that we're here is because Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. In fact, His name is in the files about 13,000 times. So I think at this point we can just say they're the Trump files and Epstein happens to be in them. To keep all that power and all the secrets protected, he convinced 77 million Americans to line up behind him, to vote for him, to make America great again. But he lied. And then the fact is, and this is the wildest part, he told them he would release the files. He didn't release the files. And they still love him anyway. Like, so that feeling you have, like all of this shit is like deeply wrong, that there's something rotten under the surface, that feeling's quite sane, my friend. This is not normal. Okay, so before we go on any further, I just want to be really clear about like what this show actually is and what it absolutely is not. So first, a little bit about myself and why I care about this. You know, I'm really obsessed with politics, psychology, leadership, power dynamics, group dynamics, and I just really want to understand how people end up following someone like Donald Trump, how somebody becomes MAGA, how people get talked up into giving up their own rights. Look at you, pick me gays. And then how propaganda rewires what we think is normal. So this show is for you. If you're a radical leftist scum, it's a great place to be. If you feel like you're being gaslit by the headlines, people around you, Kristi Noem, or if you scroll the news and think, wow, everyone's like weirdly calm about this, or maybe they're supporting it, and maybe you feel like you're the oddball out, you're not. Trust me. And then I'm always about hot takes, but I also want to give you more than hot takes. I also want to give you language and frameworks and patterns so we can make sense of what's actually happening. And I'll also be honest, I am not here to be neutral. So we're going to draw some really hard lines. This is not a both sides show. Okay? We are radical leftist scum. That's the side that we're taking. This is not civility politics where we prioritize the comfort of bigots over the safety of people whose rights are on the line. I don't give a shit about your racism, your sexism, your homophobia. I care about people's safety. I care about the law being followed. There was a moment where I thought, maybe I should try to understand where they're coming from. Maybe I should be the reasonable one. You know, I teach classes on things like conflict management and emotional intelligence. So I try to practice what I teach. And I thought, there's got to be a middle ground. But you know what? Then the whole Charlie Kirk doxing thing happened with everybody. And then I watched the reaction after Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good were publicly killed. MAGA folks, the same people who call themselves pro-life and they scream at the top of their lungs that abortion is murder, were in the comments of people's posts saying FAFO and comply. Yeah, that don't tread on me group, all of a sudden it was like comply. FAFO about somebody getting murdered? Fuck that. Like, sorry, you don't get to call yourself the moral side while having Jesus as king in your profile and then cheer on executions in broad daylight. Fuck that. And frankly, fuck them. So no, this is not a show where I pretend everyone's arguments have equal weight while one side is actively cheering violence. This show is also for me to fight this whole MAGA anti-intellectual movement until the day that I die. I actually saw this quote on Facebook it was posted by some guy named Tony Rush. I'm going to read it to you because I thought it was just like, oh, this is why I'm here. You cannot argue with MAGA. They demand evidence, then call your sources biased. You provide primary sources. They claim they're doctored. You show them video. They say it's out of context. You give them context. They say you're cherry picking. This isn't a debate. This is a systemic refusal to allow reality to intrude on mythology. You're not arguing facts. You're arguing whether facts exist. Whew. I read that and I fell out of my chair. That was so good. So I want to give you though, instead, here's the core promise of this show. Every week, we're going to look at a specific situation. It could be a news story. It could be a law. It could be ICE again. It could be, I'm a gay man, so I will definitely be advocating for the LGBTQ plus community here. All minority groups, Black, African-American community, women's rights. That's what we're going to look at. And then we'll decode like what's really going on underneath the talking points and the spin. And then we'll talk about movements like MAGA and how MAGA manages to twist themselves into pretzels. The mental gymnastics of MAGA is so real. I just wish they would stretch first because they just keep hurting themselves. They don't, if you look at them closely, they have no consistent moral code or beliefs. They may believe one thing one day, but when Donald Trump tells them something else, they believe in something else. Epstein, like I said, that they'll say abortion is murder, but then people are murdered in broad daylight. So all of a sudden, it's okay. Trump ran on the platform of draining the swamp and exposing the Epstein list. And when they didn't do it, they got mad for a few seconds. I remember people like Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly and other podcasters like said something about it. And then one day it was like a uniform. Everyone was like, cool with it. Okay. And then even though Pam Bondi released like less than 1% of the files she was supposed to from the Epstein files, even when his name is showing up and being blacked out, they're just like, oh, okay. Well, no more outrage. Okay. So this is what happens when you've trained in an authoritarian structure. And yeah, like I'm talking about like American Christianity or Christian nationalism, both of them, which Christian nationalism, if you look at MAGA as a cult, every cult has a religious base. And Christian nationalism is MAGA's religion. But religion has a structure in place. There's a chosen leader. Questioning him and it's usually him, is considered rebellion. And your job is obedience, not curiosity. Interesting enough, authoritarianism and fascism are actually structured the same way. Chosen leader, do not question, obedience only, no curiosity. And so when you look at religion, religion's often just, all religion really is a political ideology that controls the masses. It's the other half of the coin. Politics is one side, religion's the other. They're actually not separate. They're designed to work together. So people who are religious are more likely to slide into political authoritarianism because it's the same emotional wiring. It's just different branding. Now, it's interesting. On the other side, there's research that's pretty clear that shows that people who have more exposure to diverse ideas, higher education, and are more open to experience with the personality trait, they tend to lean left. So MAGA calls people like us radical leftist scum. What they're really saying is, you refuse to shut off your brain and obey. And that's who this show is for. People who refuse to shut off their brains. People who feel that constant, this is not normal alarm bell. People who want tools to understand what's happening. And every week we're going to pick that one thing. Again, law, protest, a viral clip. And we'll lay out what they say is happening. We'll break down what is actually happening. And then we'll look at the psychology and the power dynamics underneath it. So Christy Nome is especially not going to like this podcast. This is just about clarity, patterns, and language that you can use when someone in your life says, I don't know. I don't follow politics. Both sides are bad. See you in the next episode. Thank you.